Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I thought I would make a video talking about whether or not it's worth it to buy an N-Series tractor in 2022. Specifically, I have a 1952 Ford 8N. Off the top of my head, I believe that's the last year they made them. The 8N, they started making them in 1948, and I believe they stopped in 1952. The 8N is a little bit different than the 9N and the 2N. Not all the N-Series tractors are exactly the same. The 9Ns are the oldest. They started in 1939. That's when they started making those. Then they moved to the 2Ns, which were made in 1942 to 1948. I'm not really totally familiar with the 2N and the 9Ns, but I know that they're not too much different than the 8Ns. They are an N-Series tractor, so I thought I would just throw them in here in this video as I go through and talk about the different things about this tractor. So as I make this video, like I said, it is 2022, and you know, the newest you can pick these N-Series tractors up is about a 70-year-old tractor, the 1952s, or at the very oldest you can pick up an 83-year-old tractor, those 1939s. So they're very, very old tractors. They don't offer a lot of technology, but they are very, very simple. So in terms of simplicity, there are some problems here with, you know, the setup I've got on this tractor, but basically they're all going to be carbureted 4-cylinder engines, and their ignition system is going to be a distributor. So the later 8N models have a distributor on the side. This is nice, gives you a lot better access, because this is apparently something you have to dig in once in a while. I've owned this tractor for coming up on almost a year now. I've never had to dig into that distributor, but apparently on the older 8Ns and the 2Ns and the 9Ns, they are on the very front here, somewhere in the front of the engine, and they're very difficult and frustrating to get to. That is one reason why the 8Ns are, I think, a little bit more sought after, is that alone. But a lot of people don't like carbureted engines, and you will be dealing with a carbureted engine here on this machine. I think the key to carbureted engines is just to keep fresh gas in them and keep them running. Start them up every couple of weeks. There have been times where I haven't used this thing for a month, but you know, I come out here, try and come out every couple of weeks and make sure that I start it up, run it around the block real quick, and then park it just to keep it running. I think that's the key to carbureted engines, keeping them running right. And they don't really bother me. In fact, I like the ability to work on them, because anything fuel injected is going to be a lot harder to work on. So continuing on, talking about older technology, you don't really see these anymore, but this is an old oil bath air filter. What I hear people say is that they're actually superior to the paper filters we have these days. And I think it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, they are a little bit more work, I think, to maintain and take care of. But that's just something to note. You will have an oil bath air filter on these things. The transmission is a 4-speed transmission, obviously with reverse. And gear 1 is a little bit too fast, I think, but definitely no hydrostatic transmission options here. You've got a clutch in the front left on the other side of the transmission housing here. Again, quite old technology. Definitely not what a lot of your modern tractors are coming with these days. Just something to keep in mind. Thought I'd throw that out there. And moving back to the hydraulics and the PTO, this is you know, one of the places that a lot of people get really hung up on these tractors with, and definitely justifiably so. It's basically that these old tractors do not have live hydraulics, nor do they have a live PTO. And what that essentially means is that the PTO will not run if the clutch is pushed in, and the hydraulics will not run without the PTO engaged. And so that does kind of become somewhat of a problem. For example, right now I have my grading blade hooked up to the 3-point hitch on this thing, and that PTO shaft has to run in order for me to use the hydraulics on it. Also, I'm not able to use the hydraulics while the clutch is pushed in, which can be a little bit of a problem. Another thing, I know that a lot of people use these tractors for things like bush hogging and things like that. You want to get an overrunning clutch on that PTO shaft, because the centrifugal force of the spinning blades on like a bush hog is going to keep that PTO shaft turning, which is going to keep your wheels turning. So they can be kind of dangerous unless you get those overrunning clutches installed on the tractor. But again, old technology, these things pretty much kind of were part of the revolutionizing the 3-point hitch, from what I understand. So you're going to be able to put any kind of universal 3-point attachment on the back of these. A lot of the older tractors, and you know, this age group and older, are going to have really proprietary attachments for them. So that's one thing that is nice about the Ford 8N, is that, you know, you can use universal 3-point attachments, because like I said, they kind of helped revolutionize the 3-point attachments on tractors rather than having their own, proprietary attachments. So let's talk about parts availability of these old tractors pretty quick. Basically, you can get all the parts you need for an 8N or an N series tractor. I guess I should be a little bit careful saying that about the 9N and the 2Ns. But these 8N tractors, parts are everywhere. You can practically completely rebuild them with new parts. They're not only are they available everywhere, everything is fairly inexpensive. You can pretty much get engine rebuild kits for, I don't know, $300 to $400. Maybe someone will tell me that those are the cheap ones, and any engine rebuild kit worth getting is $1,000 from XYZ company or something. I don't really know, a whole lot about that stuff because I haven't had to go there yet, but I have looked at parts availability, and you can pretty much get everything you need for these old tractors brand new. You don't have to go buy and salvage used stuff for pretty much most of the parts on these things. Maybe an engine block you would have to, maybe some of the transmission stuff. I don't really know for sure. Again, I haven't really had to look, but parts are very, very much available. You can buy them online, shipped to your door very inexpensively. So yes, it is a 70-year-old tractor or older. You might be asking yourself, is this tractor reliable? Can I get work done without having to work on it a whole lot? And I did not buy a completely rebuilt machine here. It does need some work, but it's been a good tractor for the last year that I've used it. I've probably put, I don't know, somewhere between 20 and 40 hours on it in the last year, I would suspect. I would guess probably closer to the 40-hour mark, if anything. But that isn't a ton of time on an old tractor like this, but in the amount of time that I've used it, it starts up every time. I actually do have some kind of a little electrical gremlin. I think it's that I was given a bad alternator from the guy that sold it to me. I think it had a bad alternator from the beginning because this electrical system is not charging. And I did a complete rewire on it because he had quite a bit of an old wire rat's nest going on here, so I bought a new wiring kit for it, and it's still not charging. So either it's the gauge or it's the alternator, and I'm thinking it's more the alternator because I'm pretty sure I did see at one point that the gauge was working. I do remember seeing some kind of a charge on there. So yes, I have had some dead batteries, but that's not really the fault of the tractor is what I'm trying to say. What I'm getting at is that it's an extremely reliable tractor, I think, for all things considered. The age that it is, the technology it was using and everything, it starts and runs and does the work that I need it to do very reliably, and I've not really had any issues. I know that those distributors are one of the things with it that have to be regularly cleaned and taken care of that make them somewhat unreliable, but I would say generally speaking, it's a very reliable machine. So to answer the question, in 2022, should you pick up an N-Series tractor? In my opinion, I think it comes down to a few different things. It depends on your budget. It depends on how much they're going for in your area. It depends on what you want to do with it. It depends on what you need. It depends on quite a few things, but I would say generally speaking, yes, go for it. It's a very, very good tractor. I think all things considered, there's a reason why there's still 1 million of them out there readily available to be picked up on the market today because it is such a good and reliable tractor. I've seen a lot of people say, these tractors are still around 70 years later. Show me a Kubota in 70 years, see if it's still around or whatever. I hope to pretty much hang on to it forever if I can possibly help it. And I would still like to eventually get a new diesel subcompact tractor to have the front end loader and a lot of the capabilities that those tractors have. But I definitely do appreciate the old Ford 8Ns. There are aspects of the new tractors that are definitely better, but I think that there's aspects of these old N-Series tractors that definitely have their place, in a modern day environment, homesteads especially. I have heard people refer to these as the real garden tractor, so to speak. I think they're a little bit too big to do a lot of the garden work that you might do, but I mean, they definitely could put in a very large garden. They're very good for, driveway and road maintenance. If you wanted to plow, plowing's not a big thing for me. I do want to do some hobby farming. That's another subject for another day. Essentially, yeah, I think homesteaders, hobby farmers, people like that, this is a fantastic tractor to get yourself into. Yeah, in 2022, again, think about your budget, think about what you need out of the tractor, things like that. But if you're considering picking one of these things up, I think it's definitely worth it in 2022. Thanks everyone for watching. If you could give this video a big thumbs up, I'd appreciate it. And if you're not a subscriber, go down, click that subscribe button, helps the channel out, and you'll get more content like this. We'll see you in the next video.